You wake up every day ready to give your all, to invest everything into a relationship. You pour your heart into it. You give it your energy, your time, your love. But there's something you can't shake. Something deep inside tells you that no matter how much you give, no matter how much you try, it just doesn't feel right. You ever had that feeling? That gut-wrenching sense that you're being used? That you're just a stepping stone, a convenience? Let me tell you something. People don't always have the courage to be upfront with you. They don't always have the decency to be honest about their intentions. And so they stay close, but only when it's convenient for them. They tell you what you want to hear, but their actions speak a different language. They may call you at their lowest point when they need you to be their savior. They'll show up when it's comfortable for them, but disappear when it's your turn to need them. That's not love. That's not real. That's not someone who cares about you. That's someone who's using you. You see, when a person is only interested in using you, they'll keep you at arm's length. They'll never let you get too close. They'll keep you on a leash, pulling you in when they need you and pushing you away when they don't. They'll feed you just enough attention to keep you coming back for more. They'll flatter you, tell you how amazing you are, how much they appreciate you. But the truth is, it's all a game they're playing with your emotions, your time, and your love. They'll make you feel like you're special, but deep down, they're not invested in the real you. They're invested in what you can give them, your support, your kindness, your resources. They take and they take and they take. But when the table turns, when it's time for you to ask for something in return, they'll suddenly be too busy, too tired, or too occupied. They'll find a reason to be distant. They'll give you just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to truly feel valued. You ever notice how some people have perfect timing? Not the kind that shows up with flowers when you're down or sends a text just to check in when they feel your silence, but the kind that shows up only when they need something. When life hits them hard, they remember your name. When they're lonely, they suddenly care. But where are they when you're the one fighting your battles in silence? Where are they when the tears fall and no one sees? That's when you know this ain't about love, this is about need. It's about convenience. They show up when their world gets cold and they need the warmth of your loyalty, your comfort, your spirit. But when you need a shoulder, when you need someone to just be there, you hear nothing. That silence, that absence, it speaks louder than their sweet words ever could, because someone who truly loves you won't wait for you to cry out for help. They'll be there before the tears fall. They'll sense the storm before it comes. But the person who only shows up when it's easy for them, that's not your friend. That's not your partner. That's a user. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from feeling alone while someone you care about is right there, but still not present. You send the text, they leave it on read. You open up your heart, and they give you silence. But when they're hurting, suddenly they remember how to call. Suddenly they remember how to be kind, and you're so full of heart, so full of compassion. You answer, you pick up, you show up, because that's who you are. You don't calculate your love. You don't ration your support. You give freely, fully. And they know that. They know exactly what kind of soul you are, and they take advantage of it. You become their emergency contact, but only during their emergency. And when the sun shines again in their world, they vanish. They go back to forgetting you exist. And you're left wondering what you did wrong. Let me tell you, you didn't do anything wrong. You just gave your heart to someone who never planned to hold it with care. It's always the same pattern, isn't it? You're the one who remembers birthdays, who checks in when they're quiet, who listens without judgment. But when you go quiet, when you withdraw just a little to see if they'll notice, nothing happens. No call, no message, just silence. And that's when it hurts the most. Not because you need someone to save you, but because you deserve someone who notices when you're not okay. Someone who doesn't need a crisis to remember you. Someone who's present, not just when it's convenient, but always. But instead, you get half love. You get performance. You get presence when it serves them. And you tell yourself, maybe they're busy. Maybe they're going through something. And maybe they are. But let me ask you this. When you were busy, did you still show up for them? When you were tired, did you still check in? When you had every reason to walk away, didn't you still stay? That's the difference. That's what they'll never match. They know you'll answer. They know you'll be there. So they don't try. They don't prioritize you. You're not someone they plan for. You're someone they fall back on. And that right there is the truth too many people ignore. When someone only comes around when it's easy, when it's beneficial, when it's about them, that is not connection. That's consumption. They consume your light. They consume your peace. They take and take because they know you'll give. And the most heartbreaking part, you keep hoping they'll change. You keep believing that one day they'll see your worth. But the truth is they do see it. That's why they keep coming back. They see how good you are, how rare you are. They want to match it. They don't want to earn it. Because earning means effort. Because earning means effort. And effort is for people they care about. So if they're not making the effort, that tells you everything. You ever wonder why you feel so emotionally drained after every conversation with them? It's because you're giving from a place of truth while they're receiving from a place of convenience. Your sincerity becomes their comfort zone. Your love becomes their escape. But your pain, your needs, your silence, that's too much for them. They don't want the full picture. They just want the part of you that serves their purpose. You become a character in their story, not a partner in a shared journey. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who checks in without being asked, who listens without waiting to speak, who sees you, not just what you can do for them. And until you believe that with your whole heart, you will keep inviting the same pain, the same pattern, the same disappointment. Because love isn't just about giving. It's about giving with return. It's about being seen, heard, and valued when it matters most. They make you feel like you're too much when you finally ask for something, like your needs are a burden, like your feelings are inconvenient. That's how people who use you operate. They minimize your emotions and amplify their own. They'll expect you to be available 24/7, but if you need something, they go quiet. They get cold. They make you feel guilty for asking. And you shrink. You apologize. You question yourself. You wonder if maybe you're the problem, but listen to me. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. The right person will never make you feel guilty for needing them. The right person will be honored to show up for you. Not because they owe you, but because they love you. Because they care. Because your well-being matters to them. So if someone makes you feel small for needing basic emotional care, that's not love. That's emotional negligence. And it will eat away at your peace until you finally say, enough. People who only show up when it's convenient for them always have excuses. I've been busy. I didn't see your message. I've got a lot going on. But let me tell you something. People make time for what matters to them. Always. You could be across the world in a different time zone, going through the darkest days of your life, and someone who truly cares will find a way to reach you. Love finds a way. Effort finds a way. Excuses, they find an exit. And the longer you accept those excuses, the more you condition yourself to believe that you don't deserve consistent love. That you should be satisfied with scraps. That just because someone shows up once in a while, it means they care. No, care is consistent. Love is consistent. If someone is only present when they need you, they don't love you. They love what you do for them. And you need to start seeing that for what it is. Transactional, not transformational. You become their emotional sponge, their motivator, their peace, their go-to when things fall apart. But you're never their celebration, never their comfort, never their consistent. They come when they're empty and leave when they're full. And the most painful part is you keep welcoming them back. Not because you're weak, but because you're loyal. Because your love is real. And that's the part they exploit. They know you're rare, they know you're pure, and they take your softness for stupidity. But your love is not foolish, it's powerful. And when you finally decide to stop giving it to people who only use it, your life will change, your peace will return. And you'll realize that being alone is far better than being with someone who makes you feel lonely in their presence. Don't let anyone treat your heart like a convenience store they visit when life gets tough. You are not a backup plan. You are not a temporary shelter. You are a home, a safe place, a light. When they ghost you and come back with a sweet smile, don't forget how that silence made you feel. Don't forget the hours you waited, the tears you shed, the conversations you had in your head while they were off living like you didn't matter. Don't forget how your soul crumbled in the quiet, because that's the part they'll never see. They'll only see your arms open again, your heart forgiving again, your time given again. And you wonder why they don't change? It's because they never had to. You keep resetting the story. You keep offering love to someone who sees it as optional, as background noise. And I'm here to tell you, it's not your job to teach someone how to love you. It's your job to protect yourself when they refuse to. It's your job to stop answering to convenience and start responding to consistency. Because love is not seasonal, it's not occasional, it's not part-time, and neither should you be. You don't need 100 people in your life. You need a few who show up every time, who stay when the party ends, when the masks fall, when the storm comes. People who don't just come around when they're empty, but who stand by you whether you're full or broken. And that starts with you. The way you love yourself sets the tone for how others love you. So if you keep showing up for people who disappear when you bleed, ask yourself, am I showing up for myself first? Am I loving me enough to walk away from what doesn't serve me? Because until you do, convenience will keep knocking, users will keep calling, and your soul will stay tired. You don't deserve that. You are not created to be someone's option. You are not a bandage. You are not a backup. You are a blessing. And it's time to start acting like it. It's a cruel kind of manipulation. When someone knows you're starving for love, craving connection, desperate for a moment of real care, and instead of giving you their heart, they give you crumbs. Just enough to keep you close. Just enough to stop you from walking away. One sweet message, one compliment, one rare moment of vulnerability, and suddenly you're hopeful again. You start believing maybe this time it's real. But then they disappear, they pull back, they go cold, and you're left chasing a ghost. Replaying the good moment over and over in your head like it meant more than it did. That's how they trap you. That's how they control you, not with consistent love, but with unpredictable affection. And let me tell you something. Inconsistency is not love, it's manipulation. Because if someone truly cared, they wouldn't leave you wondering. You keep holding on to potential, not the reality of how they treat you, but the promise they flash like bait, that promise of maybe. Maybe they'll love you right, maybe they'll see your worth, maybe they'll finally choose you. But every time you get close, they pull away. And every time they feel you slipping, they pull you back in with just enough to restart the cycle. That's not love, that's control. They don't want to lose you, but they don't want to commit either. They want your presence without the responsibility, your heart without the effort. And you're so loyal, so genuine, so deeply rooted in love that you accept the little they give and make it feel like everything. But that's not your job. You're not here to turn scraps into meals. You deserve a full table. You deserve to be chosen, not strung along, not kept on standby while they figure out what they want. They know exactly what they're doing. This isn't an accident. This isn't confusion, it's calculated. They give you attention when they feel you drifting and withdraw it once they know you're hooked again. It's the silent treatment when you need them most, and sudden warmth when you finally gain the strength to let go. It's emotional whiplash. One day they're calling you baby, the next day they're distant like you don't exist. One week they're making you feel like the center of their world, the next they're out there giving that same energy to someone else. And you keep trying to find the pattern. Keep trying to be better, to be enough, to unlock some magical version of yourself that makes them stay. But listen, the problem isn't you. The problem is they're only giving you enough to make you stay, but never enough to make you feel secure. That's intentional. That's manipulation. You end up addicted to the highs and lows, to the thrill of their rare affection and the devastation of their absence. It becomes a cycle, a roller coaster, and it wears on your spirit. You start confusing anxiety with love, You start believing that love is supposed to hurt, to leave you guessing. You mistake emotional chaos for passion. And that's how they trap you, because you're not staying for what they're giving. You're staying for what you're hoping they'll give. For the version of them that shows up once a month and reminds you of why you fell in the first place. But love isn't supposed to be a gamble. Love isn't supposed to feel like a game of chance. The right love feels steady, safe, clear. And if someone only lights a spark when you're about to walk away, then that spark is not about love. It's about control. You're not a puppet. You're a person, a soul. And you deserve a love that doesn't require begging. They want the benefit of you, your energy, your encouragement, your loyalty, your softness, your forgiveness. But they never offer you the same in return. They want to keep you close enough to reach you, but far enough to never be responsible for your pain. They give you hope, but never clarity. Promises, but never action. They love the way you love them, but they don't love you, and the hardest part is admitting that. Admitting that someone can like you, need you, desire you, and still not love you in the way you deserve. Because love isn't just presence, it's participation. Love is showing up every day, not just when it's convenient. Love is mutual, not manipulative. So when you're getting just enough to keep you hoping, to keep you stuck, that's not romance. That's emotional starvation. And no matter how strong you are, if you keep feeding off crumbs, you will eventually start to believe you don't deserve more. You keep thinking if you prove yourself, they'll change. If you stay long enough, love hard enough, forgive deep enough, they'll wake up and love you back the same way. But people who play with your emotions like this, they don't change because they don't have to. Every time they hurt you and you stay, you teach them they can get away with it. Every time they disappear and return to open arms, they learn they never have to give you more than the bare minimum. You become a mirror for their comfort, not a receiver of their love. And the truth is, no matter how much love you give, you can't change someone who benefits from your confusion. You can't heal someone who uses your empathy as an escape route. So stop waiting for them to become someone they never promised to be. Start listening not just to their words, but to their patterns. Because real love doesn't need manipulation to survive. You are worth more than being someone's second thought. You are worth more than the confusion, the mixed signals, the half-hearted affection. You are not made to chase, to beg, to convince someone of your worth. You are made to be loved fully, deeply, and without conditions. And the more you let people feed you crumbs, the more you convince yourself that crumbs are meals. You settle, you lower the bar. You tell yourself at least they're still here. But don't confuse presence with commitment. Don't confuse staying with loving. They might still be in your life, but they're not showing up in your heart. They're not building with you. They're just occupying space while offering nothing that feeds your soul. And that's the danger. That's what keeps people stuck, thinking that something is better than nothing. But emotional manipulation is worse than loneliness. It's poison dressed up as affection. You get tired, not all at once, but little by little. Tired of guessing, tired of waiting, tired of the roller coaster, tired of wondering why you're never enough to be fully chosen. And that fatigue, that's your soul begging for peace. That's your heart telling you this isn't love. Love does not feel like a test. Love does not make you question your worth. So when someone feeds you just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to make you feel loved, walk away. Even if your voice trembles, even if your heart breaks. Because sometimes healing starts when you stop pretending it doesn't hurt. When you stop pretending the crumbs are enough. When you stop waiting on someone who's never coming. You may feel alone at first, but that loneliness is better than living in emotional captivity. That silence is where your peace will begin again. And maybe one day they'll realize what they lost. Maybe they'll look back and remember the one who always showed up, the one who loved without limits, the one who waited, hoped, forgave, endured. But by then your heart will have healed. Your peace will have returned. You'll no longer crave what once controlled you. Because once you taste real love, consistent love, honest love, intentional love, those crumbs won't tempt you anymore. You'll know the difference. You'll see the manipulation clearly. You'll trust yourself to walk away the first time someone gives you less than what you deserve. And you'll protect your heart like the precious, powerful thing it is. Because you finally learned love is not pain, love is not confusion, love is not a game. And the next time someone tries to feed you just enough to keep you hooked, you'll smile, walk away, and say, I'm not hungry anymore. They talk like they love you, but they act like they don't even see you. They say all the right things. I care about you. You're important to me. I'm here for you. But when it's time to show up, they vanish. When it's time to be consistent, they hesitate. And deep down, you feel it. You feel the disconnect between what they say and what they do. You feel the confusion, the emotional tug of war, and it leaves you questioning yourself. Am I expecting too much? Am I being dramatic? No, you're not. Because words without action are just noise. And you deserve more than noise. You deserve presence. You deserve effort. You deserve proof. Someone who truly means what they say will show it to you without you having to beg, without you having to explain what love should already know how to do. They give you promises with no follow-through. They say they'll call, you wait by the phone. They say they want to fix things, but they keep breaking you. They say you matter, but you keep ending up at the bottom of their priority list. And the worst part, you keep holding on to their potential. You fall in love with the version of them they present through words, not the reality of who they are through action. Because in your heart, you want to believe them. You want to believe that the version they describe, the future they paint, the love they speak about, that it's all real. But love isn't real just because someone says it is. It becomes real through effort, through choices, through the way they treat you when it's hard, not just when it's easy. If someone's actions keep contradicting their words, believe the actions. Always believe the actions. You want to believe they care. So when they say things like, I'm just going through something right now, or I didn't mean to hurt you, you give them grace again and again and again. But you start to notice a pattern. Their words always seem to come after the damage is done, after the silence, after the distance, after the inconsistency. And suddenly those words start to feel like Band-Aids over bullet wounds, like temporary comfort just to keep you from walking away. And every time you give them another chance, a part of you hopes this time will be different. But real love doesn't need second chances every week. Real love doesn't come with repeated confusion. Real love brings peace. It brings clarity. It doesn't just say, I love you. It lives it, it breathes it, it proves it in the little moments, in the quiet actions, in the everyday effort that never has to be begged for. There's a difference between saying I've got you and actually showing up. It's easy to speak. It's easy to write sweet messages, post pictures, say I miss you. But when you're crying at 2 a.m. and need someone to talk to, do they answer? When your world feels like it's falling apart, do they come closer or drift away? When it's time to support your dreams, fight for the relationship, meet you halfway, do they show up or shut down? You start to realize that love doesn't live in what's posted, what's promised, what's performed. It lives in the way someone chooses you, not once, but consistently. Not when it's convenient, but even when it's difficult. Love doesn't hide when it's hard. Love shows up when it's hard. So if someone's actions go missing when you need them most, their words don't mean a thing. Real love never has to hide behind excuses. People who talk more than they act are often in love with the idea of you, not the responsibility of loving you. They love the comfort you bring, the validation, the loyalty, but they're not ready to do what it takes to love you fully. They'll say they care, but won't change their behavior. They'll apologize, but keep repeating the same mistakes. And you keep forgiving, you keep showing up because your heart is genuine, because you love with depth. But love isn't just about giving, it's about receiving too. And if all you ever get are broken promises and inconsistent actions, then you're not being loved. You're being used. You're being emotionally drained. Because a relationship built on sweet words but hollow actions is a slow death to the soul. You start shrinking, doubting, questioning your worth. But let me tell you something, you are not hard to love. You are just loving the wrong person too deeply. It's time to stop accepting words as proof Because words are easy to fake, but actions, they reveal everything. Someone can say, I want to be with you, but avoid making time. Someone can say, I'll change, but never work on themselves. Someone can say, you're everything to me, but still make you feel like nothing. And it's in those gaps, in those inconsistencies, that your heart starts to break. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Every time they say one thing and do another, it chips away at your trust, your peace, your belief in love. You start to wonder if anyone means what they say. But don't let one person's failure define love for you. Love is still real, it still exists. But it exists in actions, in effort, in truth. So don't let pretty words blind you. Look at how they move. Look at how they love you when no one's watching. People who care don't just talk about it, they prove it. And not in grand gestures, not in dramatic apologies after weeks of silence. They prove it by being consistent, by remembering the little things, by checking in, by choosing you every day, even on the hard ones. Because love is built in the daily decision to care, to stay, to invest. And you'll know the difference when you see it. When someone's actions align with their words, you won't have to wonder. You won't have to chase clarity. You won't sit up late at night replaying mixed signals. You'll feel it in your gut, in your spirit. Because when love is real, it brings calm, not confusion. It brings stability, not chaos. So if you're stuck in a cycle of questioning, of doubting, of trying to decode someone's intentions, it's because their actions are telling a truth, their words are trying to cover up. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for alignment, for integrity, for someone who doesn't just say they love you, but who shows it, who chooses you not when it's convenient, but when it costs them something. That's the real test of love. How someone behaves when it's hard, when they're tired, when they're tempted, when you're not at your best. Because anyone can love you in the highlight reel, but only the real ones show up in the mess. So pay attention to the ones who stay, who call when they say they will, who show up without being asked, who don't need a reminder of your value because they see it clearly. Those are the people who deserve access to your heart. Not the ones who offer you dreams but deliver disappointment. Not the ones who break your trust and think, I'm sorry is enough to fix it. No, you deserve more. You deserve a love that shows up, that keeps its word, that doesn't make you second guess your place. And if someone can't give you that, let them go. Not because you don't love them, but because you finally started loving yourself more. Because your heart is given enough. Your energy has been drained long enough. You don't need someone who says all the right things. You need someone who lives the right way. Someone whose loyalty doesn't vanish in silence. Someone whose love doesn't disappear in difficulty. And I know letting go is hard. I know it hurts to walk away from someone you believed in. But nothing hurts more than staying in a love that doesn't feel safe. Nothing is heavier than constantly hoping for someone to become who they said they were. So breathe, heal, and remind yourself you don't have to settle for words. You were made for action. You were made for truth. They don't hit you, but they hurt you. They don't leave bruises, but they leave scars you can't see, scars on your mind, your heart, your sense of reality. Emotional manipulation is quiet, it's subtle. It slips in slowly like poison disguised as love, and at first, you don't even realize it's happening. They make you question your own feelings, they twist your words, they turn the truth inside out until you don't even trust yourself anymore. You start apologizing for things you didn't do, blaming yourself for their bad days, bending over backward just to keep them calm. And the saddest part, you start thinking that's what love is supposed to feel like. That maybe this chaos is passion. That maybe walking on eggshells is normal. But it's not. That's not love. That's control. That's manipulation. And no matter how many sweet words they use to dress it up, abuse wrapped in compliments is still. They make you feel guilty for having needs. When you express your pain, they make you feel like you're too sensitive. When you ask for time or respect, they tell you you're needy. When you set boundaries, they act like you're pushing them away. So what do? You shrink. You silence yourself. You suppress your emotions just to keep the peace. But that's not peace. That's fear disguised as compromise. That's your soul folding just to keep someone else comfortable. Emotional manipulators don't want love, they want control. They want to be the center of your world while giving you crumbs of attention. And when you start pulling away, they love bomb you with affection just enough to make you question if they're really the problem or if it's you. That's the cycle. That's the trap. It's confusion packaged as love. And if you stay in it too long, you start to lose sight of who you even are. They twist every argument into your fault. If you bring up something that hurts you, suddenly you're overreacting. If you catch them lying, somehow you're the one causing drama. They never take full responsibility. They deflect, project, and protect their own ego at all costs. And the emotional roller coaster becomes exhausting. One day they're sweet, the next day they're cold. One moment they're praising you, the next they're punishing you with silence. You never know which version of them you'll get, so you become hyper-aware, anxious, always trying to read the room before you speak. That's what manipulation does. It makes you afraid to exist freely. It makes you believe that if you could just be better, love harder, try more, maybe they'll stop hurting you. But let me tell you something, no amount of love can fix a person who uses pain to control others. It's not you, it's them. It's always been them. You start to notice how they spin the narrative. When they talk about your relationship to others, they paint themselves as the victim. They tell stories that make you sound crazy, unstable, ungrateful. And because they're charming, because they know how to use words like weapons, people believe them. You feel isolated, misunderstood, alone. Because even your friends might start saying, well, maybe you're being too harsh. They seem like such a good person. But manipulators wear masks. They perform well in public, but their true selves show up in private. Behind closed doors, they use silence as punishment, guilt as leverage, pity as a weapon. And the worst part, they make you feel like they're the only person who could ever love you. Like no one else would put up with you. That's how they keep you stuck. Not through love, but through fear, through shame, through psychological warfare. But don't buy that lie. You are not unlovable. You are just being emotionally starved by someone who feeds off your confusion. They always know when you're about to walk away. Right when you find the courage to leave, they shift. They soften. They become the version of themselves you always wanted. Suddenly they're apologizing, texting you good morning, telling you how much you mean to them, and you fall for it. Because you want to believe in the potential. You want to believe that this time the change is real, but it never lasts. Because it was never about change, it was about control. It was about reeling you back in just enough to make you stay. That's the manipulation. They don't change for real, they change for effect, and when you stay, the cycle starts again. The coldness, the gaslighting, the guilt. You think love is supposed to save them, fix them, heal them. But real love doesn't need to be rescued. Real love doesn't need you to suffer just to feel secure. They use your empathy against you. Because you care, they take advantage. Because you're patient, they test your limits. Because you're understanding, they never feel the need to change. And while you're losing sleep trying to figure out how to make it work, they're sleeping fine knowing you'll always come back. That's the imbalance. That's the manipulation. They've trained you to doubt yourself, to walk on emotional landmines, to feel grateful for breadcrumbs. But you weren't put on this earth to beg for love. You weren't born to be someone's emotional punching bag. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve truth. You deserve someone who doesn't just need you, but respects you. And I know it's hard to leave, especially when the manipulation has made you feel like this chaos is all you're worth. But deep down, there's a voice that's still alive, a whisper that says you deserve more. Listen to it. That's your freedom calling. They make their love conditional. You get affection only when you behave how they want. You get their attention only when you suppress your truth. And if you ever step out of line, if you ever call them out or ask for better, they withdraw it all. Suddenly they're cold, distant, dismissive. That's not love. That's emotional blackmail. That's manipulation in its rawest form. Real love doesn't say, I'll love you if. It says, I love you, period, without strings, without threats. But manipulators need control more than connection. So they keep you anxious. They keep you doubting. Because the moment you feel stable, you start to see clearly. And clarity is dangerous to manipulators because it leads to freedom. It leads to boundaries. It leads to escape. And they can't risk that, so they keep pulling you back in, just enough to keep you questioning, hoping, doubting. But the truth is, you are not crazy. You're just being emotionally played by someone who knows exactly what they're doing. You start to feel like a shell of who you used to be. The version of you that laughed freely, dreamed boldly, spoke confidently, that version feels distant now. Because every time you stood up for yourself, they made you feel like you were the problem. And slowly you started adjusting yourself, dimmed your light, lowered your voice, silenced your needs, just to avoid another explosion, another guilt trip, another wave of emotional chaos. That's what manipulation does. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your identity. But hear me, that version of you is not gone. They buried it under fear and confusion, but it's still there. It's waiting for the day you finally say enough, waiting for the moment you choose peace over pain, truth over lies, freedom over fear. And when that day comes, when you walk away for real, you'll feel it. You'll feel the weight lift. And that version of you, it'll rise again. You're not too sensitive. You're not too emotional. You're not too much. You're someone who feels deeply, who loves completely, who gives endlessly. And that's not weakness, that's strength. But your strength deserves to be protected. Your heart deserves to be honored. And anyone who uses your emotions against you is not loving you, they're using you. Emotional manipulation isn't love, it's control, dressed up in sweet lies. And you don't have to carry that anymore. You don't have to explain your worth to someone who benefits from your confusion. Your clarity, your healing, your freedom, it's all waiting for you. The moment you walk away from the one who manipulates you is the moment you walk toward the one who will never have to. And that person, that peace, that truth, it starts with you. So breathe. Stand tall. And remember, the moment you stop believing their manipulation is the moment you start believing in yourself. There are moments in life when you don't just want someone, you need them. Not for money, not for favors, but for presence, for comfort, for reassurance that you're not facing your darkest hour alone. And it's in those moments when your world feels like it's falling apart that you find out who's real, who's solid, who's riding with you no matter what storm shows up. But instead, they disappear. The ones who swore they'd always be there suddenly go quiet. The ones who called you family stop answering your calls. The ones who basked in your light, who cheered when you were on top, vanish when the lights go out. And that's a different kind of pain. That's betrayal dressed in silence. That's abandonment wearing a familiar face. And you sit there broken, confused, asking yourself what you did wrong. But hear me, you didn't do anything wrong. You just reached a depth they were never willing to meet you in. You called for love, and they showed you distance. That's not on you. They loved you when you were strong, when you had it all together, when you were smiling and shining and giving. But the moment you got weak, the moment you needed a hand instead of giving one, they pulled away, like your pain was inconvenient, like your struggle made them uncomfortable. And you realize they weren't in love with you. They were in love with your strength. They were in love with the way you made them feel. But love isn't tested when things are easy. It's proven when things are hard. Real ones lean in when the world walks out. But users, takers, they leave you gasping for air while they swim to safer waters. And that's what cuts the deepest. Not the pain, but the silence. Not the struggle, but the absence of the ones you thought would hold your hand through it. You thought they'd sit with you in your pain. But they chose comfort over connection. They chose distance over devotion. You remember how you showed up for them. When they were broken, you were there. When they cried, you wiped their tears. When they doubted themselves, you reminded them who they were. And you didn't do it for attention. You did it because you loved them. Because loyalty runs deep in your soul. So when your turn came, when you needed just a little bit of what you always gave, it shattered you to realize they couldn't return it. Not even a fraction. Not even a phone call. And it wakes you up. It makes you reevaluate every connection, every conversation, every fake "I got you" they ever said. Because real love doesn't hide. Real friendship doesn't vanish. And real loyalty doesn't disappear just because you're in the valley. In fact, that's when it's supposed to show up the most. But now you see the truth. Some people weren't there for you. They were there for the benefit of being around you. And when the benefits dried up, so did their presence. They'll say they're busy. They'll say they didn't know how to help. They'll come up with reasons, dressed as excuses, to justify why they ghosted you when you were at your lowest. But let's be real. When someone wants to be there, they show up, they check in, they care. Even if they don't have the answers, even if they don't have the right words. Presence doesn't require perfection. It just requires love. And that's what was missing. Not time, not capacity, but love. Because someone who truly loves you doesn't go silent when your world crashes. They run towards you, not away. But the ones who vanish, they never planned to stay. They were there for the sunshine, not the storms. For the celebration, not the crisis. For the good times, not the growth. And now you know, now you see it. Their absence told you more than their words ever did. It hurts, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to feel that sting in your chest when you think about how easily they forgot you, how quickly they disappeared, because pain is proof that you cared, that your heart was all the way in, that your loyalty was real. And even though they didn't deserve it, you gave it anyway. That says more about you than it ever could about them. You showed up. You stood tall for people who didn't have the strength to do the same for you. And that's not weakness. That's honor. That's integrity. But now it's time to redirect that loyalty to someone who won't disappear, someone who won't vanish, someone who will stay. And that someone is you. You got to be the one who doesn't leave yourself when things fall apart. You got to be the one who says, "I got you," and mean it when looking in the mirror. What they didn't realize is that their absence was the greatest lesson they ever gave you. It showed you who's temporary and who's timeless. It taught you how to stop expecting depth from shallow souls. It woke you up to the truth that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Some people only come for the feast, but leave when the dishes need cleaning. They're not partners, they're passengers. And when the ride gets rough, they jump out. But now you know better. Now you can see the difference between someone who's real and someone who's just around. And it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel the ache of outgrowing people you once thought would be forever. But don't stay in that sadness too long. Because the moment you let go of the ones who vanished, you make room for the ones who will never leave. You begin to realize that the most painful part wasn't their disappearance. It was the illusion that they were ever there for you in the first place. It wasn't just their silence. It was the betrayal of their promises. All the "I'll always be there and you can count on me" lines feel like a joke now. Like a script written just to keep you close, just to keep receiving your energy, your love, your time. But when you needed something back, nothing. Just echoes, just emptiness. And it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also cleansing. Because now you stop wasting your loyalty on people who only show up when it's easy. You stop begging for presents from people who were never equipped to love you properly. And slowly, you start healing. Not because they came back, but because you finally chose to stop waiting for them. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to make them see how much they hurt you, because the truth is they know. People know when they've abandoned you. They know when they've let you down. They just don't care enough to stay. And that's the hardest truth to face, that their silence wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A decision. And once you accept that, something inside you shifts. You stop chasing closure from people who were never open to you in the first place. You stop needing apologies to move forward. Because healing doesn't always come with an explanation. Sometimes it comes with a decision. A decision to walk away, not because you don't care, but because they don't. And that's reason enough. One day you'll look back at this pain and realize it was your turning point. The moment you stopped giving yourself away to people who vanish when things get real. The moment you started choosing yourself, valuing your peace, protecting your spirit. Because now you know what real love looks like. It shows up, it stays, it answers, it listens. And most of all, it doesn't disappear when the fire starts. It pulls up a chair and says, I'm with you in this. That's the kind of love you deserve. Not one that hides in the shadows, but one that walks through the storm beside you. And until you find that, you walk alone. Proud, strong, fully awake. Because being alone in truth is better than being surrounded in lies. It's one thing to say you care about somebody, and it's another thing entirely to show up for their evolution. Anybody can clap when you win, but few people are willing to walk with you while you're still bleeding, still building, still breaking the chains that tried to hold you back. That's where you start to see the truth about who's for you and who's just near you. You can tell by who waters you, not just who watches you. And the hard truth is, some of the closest people in your life don't care if you grow. They just care that you stay the same. Why? Because your growth threatens their comfort. Your healing exposes their wounds. And instead of rising with you, they'd rather keep you wounded, stuck, and doubting yourself. Not because they hate you, but because your transformation would mean they have to look in the mirror too. You ever notice how quiet they get when you start talking about your goals? How distracted they become when you try to open up about your healing? You're pouring your heart out, sharing your struggle, and they're scrolling, yawning, giving you nothing back. Because deep down, they were never interested in your healing. They were addicted to your pain. They loved the version of you that was broken, dependent, easy to control, the one who needed their approval to feel whole. But now you're trying to rise. You're talking different, moving different, thinking different. And suddenly their energy shifts. They act like you're doing too much. Like you're being dramatic, like your pain isn't valid. That's because your growth threatens their place in your life. You're evolving and they're realizing they can't follow where you're headed. Real love invests. It doesn't have to be grand. It could be a book they recommend, a podcast they send, a shoulder to lean on, a word of encouragement. But when someone truly cares about you, they care about your becoming. Not just who you are right now, but who you're fighting to become. And if someone can't support your growth, even in small ways, they're not for you. They're for the version of you that makes them comfortable. They want you stagnant. They want you dependent. They want you to stay in that familiar pain because it keeps you from outgrowing them. That's not love. That's control in disguise. And when you start to wake up to this, it shakes you. Because suddenly you realize the people you thought were cheering you on were really clapping for a version of you that kept them safe. It's wild, isn't it? You could be drowning in trauma, fighting every day just to keep your mind right, and they'll sit next to you and talk about the weather. They'll laugh with you, but never sit with your truth. They'll enjoy your company, but ignore your pain. That's not support, that's proximity. They're close, but not connected. Around, but not available. They don't ask about your triggers. They don't check if you're okay after a breakdown. They don't celebrate your healing milestones. Why? Because your healing takes effort. It requires emotional presence. It calls them to be more than just convenient companions. It asks them to care deeply, and there's something they're either unwilling or incapable of giving. So they keep it surface level, shallow, easy. But healing isn't easy. And if they can't hold space for that, they don't deserve a front row seat to your journey. You start noticing who really shows up when you begin healing. You'll see who listens when you cry for no reason, who stands beside you when you admit you're tired of pretending. You'll see who genuinely wants you to be whole and who secretly benefits from you staying fractured. And that realization, it breaks you all over again because you remember how hard you loved them, how much you rooted for their growth, how often you reminded them of their worth. But when the time came for them to pour into you, to match your energy, to return the loyalty, you were met with silence, distance, disinterest, They weren't there to help you heal. They were there for the version of you that kept quiet about your pain. And now that you're speaking up, they vanish. See, healing makes you magnetic, but also misunderstood. People think growth is glamorous. They think healing means smiling more, being positive, being light. But they don't see the nights you're up wrestling with your demons, the days when your own mind feels like the enemy. And during those moments, all you want, all you need is someone to say, I see you, I'm here, I'm proud of how far you've come. But instead, they judge you for being distant. They criticize you for changing. They call you selfish for setting boundaries. And that's when you realize your healing journey made you too heavy for people who were only built for shallow connections. They weren't built for the depth your soul requires. So let them go. Release them with love. But don't chase them back into your life just because you're lonely on the road to healing. You're not alone. You're just surrounded by people who never saw you clearly. The most dangerous people are the ones who pretend to care. They'll say the right words. They'll nod when you talk, but when it's time to show up, nowhere to be found. No follow-up, no check-ins, no effort. And you're left questioning your worth, asking yourself if maybe your healing is too much, if maybe your pain is a burden. But let me tell you something. You are not too much. You are just too real for people who only love the mask you wore. You're too honest for people who prefer denial. You're too awake for people who are still asleep in their own delusion. So don't shrink yourself to fit their comfort zone. Don't dim your healing just to make them stay. You deserve to be around people who invest in your peace, your power, your potential. Not people who watch you bleed and then ask why you're not smiling. The moment you realize they don't celebrate your growth, something shifts. It's like you finally step outside the fog and see clearly. See that all the energy you poured into them was never mutual. You were watering a garden that was never meant to bloom for you. And that's okay. It hurts, but it's okay, because now you know the truth. Now you can reclaim your energy. You can redirect that love into yourself, into people who do clap when you win, who do cry when you hurt, who show up not because they have to, but because they want to. People who understand that healing is messy, but they still walk with you through it. That's real love. That's real investment. That's what your soul is worthy of. And until that love finds you, be that love for yourself. You don't have to beg for someone to care. You don't have to convince anyone to value your healing. The ones who are meant for you will see the beauty in your scars. They'll honor your process. They'll invest not because they want something from you, but because they believe in you. Because they see the warrior behind your tears. Because they understand that healing isn't linear and growth isn't easy, but you keep showing up anyway. That's powerful. That's sacred. That's worth protecting. So if they don't invest in your healing, let them go. If they don't water your growth, walk away. Don't keep giving your sacred energy to people who only take, who only drain, who only love you when you're easy to love. You deserve better. You deserve more. And it starts by refusing to settle for less. There's a kind of tired that sleep can't fix. It sits in your bones, weighs on your chest, and clouds your spirit. It's the kind of tired that comes from constantly pouring into someone who never pours back. You're showing up. You're giving, bending, stretching beyond what's reasonable. And every time, you're left with less of yourself. You walk away from the conversation feeling smaller, emptier, like you left pieces of yourself behind just to keep the connection alive. That's not love. That's emotional robbery. That's spiritual theft. And when you find yourself always exhausted after dealing with someone, you have to stop and ask, what are they taking from me that I can't seem to recover from? You weren't made to survive on crumbs. You weren't built to exist in a relationship where the love flows one way and the silence flows back. And yet you stay, hoping that maybe if you love harder, try more, show up stronger, they'll finally see your worth. But all that trying is what's killing your peace. You're chasing validation from someone who's comfortable watching you fall apart. They're not lifting you, they're draining you. And the worst part, they pretend they don't see it. They act like your exhaustion is your fault. Like you're the dramatic one, like you're too sensitive, too emotional, too much. No, you're not too much. They're just too unwilling to love you the way you deserve to be loved. You ever been in a room with someone and felt completely alone? That hollow feeling, that ache in your chest that says, why am I giving so much to someone who can't even look me in the eyes and see my pain? You've laughed with them, cried to them, given them access to the deepest parts of your heart, and still you walk away feeling depleted. That's not connection. That's one-sided attachment. You're anchored to a person who takes and takes, but when it's your turn to receive, they vanish. They go cold, they shut down, and you convince yourself to accept it because some love, even if it's unhealthy, still feels better than being alone. But what's the point of having someone if every time you're with them, you feel like less of yourself? Love isn't supposed to feel like labor. Yes, it takes work. Yes, there are rough days, but at its core, love should revive you. It should restore your soul, not crush it. If every interaction leaves you feeling anxious, second-guessing, emotionally bankrupt, then that's not love, that's dependency. And the scariest part, you've become so used to being drained that you don't even realize how much energy you've lost. You've normalized struggle. You've romanticized sacrifice. You've convinced yourself that if you're not hurting, it must not be real. But listen, real love doesn't destroy you. Real love builds. It breathes life into your lungs. It makes you feel safe enough to grow, brave enough to heal, and valued enough to rest. Pay attention to how you feel after you talk to them. Do you feel peace or do you feel pressure? Do you walk away smiling or sighing? Because your body knows, your spirit knows. It's been sending you signals for a while now. That pit in your stomach, that tightness in your chest, that sudden shift in energy every time their name pops up on your phone. That's your soul saying, this isn't safe. This isn't right. This isn't love. And you can ignore it for a while, numb it, silence it, but eventually the truth rises and it hits you like a wave. You're not growing. You're not healing. You're not becoming. You're shrinking, fading, surviving. And for what? Just to say you have someone? Just to avoid being alone? Draining relationships disguise themselves as love when really they're rooted in control. They keep you chasing, apologizing, proving. They keep you performing for affection that should have been freely given. And the more you chase it, the more they withhold it. It's a game to them, one where they win every time you lose a little more of yourself. And you've been playing that game so long, you forgot what it feels like to be emotionally safe. You forgot what it feels like to speak your truth and not be punished for it, to set a boundary and not be abandoned for it, to need something and not feel guilty for asking. That's what real connection looks like, and you deserve that. You deserve rest, not resistance. You deserve presence, not pretense. They say love is about giving, but they don't tell you that the right love gives back. The right love fills your cup, not empties it. The right love sees when you're tired and says, let me carry you for a while. But the wrong one watches you crawl, then asks why you're not smiling. They expect you to be strong every day, to never falter, never need, never cry. And when you do, they retreat. They withdraw. They make you feel like your vulnerability is a burden, like your humanity is an inconvenience. And that's when you know you're not in love. You're in survival. And no relationship, no matter how long it's lasted, is worth losing your peace over. Sometimes we stay because we hope they'll change. We remember their good days, their sweet words, their tender moments. And we think, maybe if I just hold on a little longer, they'll come back to that version. But that's the trick. That version was never consistent. It was never stable. It was bait, just enough to keep you hooked, just enough to keep you hoping. Meanwhile, you're deteriorating. You're pouring from a well that's bone dry. You're giving water to someone who never thinks to offer you a sip. That's not sustainable. That's not sacred. That's not the kind of love your soul was designed for. You were meant for more. And every part of you is trying to scream that truth, even when your heart doesn't want to hear it. You don't need someone who makes you question your worth after every conversation. You don't need someone who leaves you emotionally hungover. You don't need someone who only loves you when you're easy, who disappears when you need depth. You need someone who adds peace to your life, not confusion, who brings calm, not chaos, who fills you up, not drains you down. And until that person comes, be that person for yourself. Stop giving access to people who only know how to take. Start honoring the exhaustion you feel, not as weakness, but as a signal, a sign that something in this dynamic is deeply wrong and you have the power to change it. Not because it's easy, but because your soul is worth the fight. So if you've been walking away from someone feeling depleted instead of fulfilled, it's time to stop walking back. You don't have to keep proving you're worthy of love. You are. You always have been. The right people will see it without you having to bleed for it. The right love will feel like peace, not pressure. The right connection will lift you, not leave you running on empty. So take your power back. Take your energy back. Take you back. And don't apologize for it. Not now. In life, we encounter people who seem to take more than they give, leaving us drained, confused, and questioning our worth. These relationships often wear the disguise of love, making us feel as though we must keep giving, keep sacrificing, and keep hoping for something that was never truly meant to return. But the truth is, love should never feel like a constant struggle. It should feel like a safe haven, a place where both people contribute, where energy is exchanged, and where growth is nurtured. When we're continuously giving our all and receiving nothing in return, we begin to lose pieces of ourselves. It's time to recognize when enough is enough and understand that our value is not defined by how much we can give to someone who doesn't appreciate it. We've all been there, feeling empty after a conversation, walking away from someone we care about and wondering why we're left feeling exhausted instead of rejuvenated. These are the signs that something isn't right. We convince ourselves that we're too much, that we need to try harder, be more patient, or make them understand. But the reality is, if they truly cared, their actions would align with their words and their love would be a source of strength, not depletion. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what's right for ourselves. It's about recognizing that we deserve love that restores us, not diminishes us. We deserve relationships that lift us up, not leave us in a state of constant emotional exhaustion. Love is not supposed to feel like a burden. Real connection is mutual. It's built on trust, respect, and shared growth. It's about both people showing up for each other, giving without expecting and receiving with gratitude. Anything less than that is simply not worth our energy. The draining relationships we find ourselves in can sometimes be hard to let go of, especially when we've invested so much of ourselves. But we must remember that we are worthy of more than half-hearted affection. We are worthy of the kind of love that fills us up, the kind that encourages us to be our best selves, not the kind that keeps us stuck in a cycle of giving until we're empty. The time has come to prioritize our well-being, to step away from what's not serving us, and to make room for the relationships that truly matter. We don't need to keep proving our worth. We don't need to keep bending over backwards for those who only show up when it's convenient for them. It's time to start choosing ourselves, to stop giving to those who only take, and to protect our energy. We deserve peace. We deserve happiness. And most of all, we deserve to feel loved, valued, and supported. As you move forward, remember that your value is not determined by how much you can give to someone who doesn't appreciate it. You are worthy of love, respect, and care, and it's time to start recognizing that. Let go of the relationships that drain you and make space for the ones that bring you peace and joy. Trust that you are deserving of a love that lifts you up and leaves you feeling fulfilled, not drained. You've got this, and I believe in you. Thank you for your time today. May you find the strength to protect your energy and the courage to walk away from what no longer serves you. God bless you. You ever look in the mirror and feel like you're finally seeing yourself, not the version that was broken, not the one that was pretending, but the real you? That moment, that sacred pause, that breath between the chaos and the calm, that's where healing begins. Not in the noise, not in the applause, not in someone else's validation. Healing begins in the stillness, in the whispers of your soul that once trembled in silence. You see, we often think healing is about forgetting what hurt us, but healing through integration, that's a different journey. That's the kind of healing that doesn't erase the scars, but embraces them. It's when your pain doesn't scream for attention anymore, it speaks with wisdom. Some days you might feel like you're standing in the middle of your past and your future, torn. But the truth is, when you begin to integrate, you're no longer fighting your story. You're learning to carry it with grace. You're becoming whole, not because the world is fixed, but because you've made peace. And if you've ever wondered, am I truly healing? Then listen close. Because there are signs, real powerful soul-shaking signs, that you're rising. You're not who you were, and that's your power. You know, there was a time when you did everything you could to cover your wounds. You smiled through the pain, laughed when your heart was breaking, nodded when you should have screamed. You learned to wear masks so well, even you started to believe them. But healing through integration, real healing, it doesn't ask you to cover those scars. It invites you to uncover them, because you finally understand that what hurt you isn't what defines you, but how you faced it, how you carried it. That's where your power lives. You no longer whisper about the things you went through. You stand up, you speak up, and not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of courage. You've looked your pain in the face and said, you won't shame me anymore. That's when you know you're healing. When you stop hiding, there's something sacred about reaching a point where your story becomes your strength. You stop being afraid of your own history. You stop cringing when someone mentions your past. You stop avoiding those parts of you that felt too broken to talk about. Because now you understand those moments were not your end. They were your becoming. Every wound, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it didn't destroy you, it forged you. It built a depth in you that shallow waters can't understand. You wear your scars like armor now. Not because you want people to feel sorry for you, but because you want them to see what survival looks like. You've turned your pain into purpose. That's a powerful transformation. And nobody can take that from you. You used to think strength meant pretending nothing ever hurt you. You thought holding it together meant staying silent, pushing through, never letting them see you cry. But now you know. It takes far more strength to be real. To stand in front of the world and say, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I've fallen, but I got back up. And every time I got back up, I rose with more fire, more truth, more grace. You don't flinch anymore when someone brings up the things you once tried to forget. Because you've done the work. You've gone into the dark corners of your soul and lit candles there. You've faced the parts of you that once begged to be ignored. And instead of running from them, you held them. You listened and you loved them back to life. That's healing. You don't tell your story for attention anymore. You tell it because someone out there is where you once were. Someone is drowning in the same silence that nearly took you out. And if your story can be a life raft, if your voice can remind them that they're not alone, that matters. That's what honoring your wounds looks like. It's not about reliving the past. It's about revealing the strength you found in the ashes. And even if your voice shakes, even if the memories still sting a little, you speak anyway. Because hiding no longer serves you. Silence no longer protects you. Truth is your medicine now. There's a moment when you stop seeing your scars as shameful reminders and you start seeing them as proof of your growth. You no longer wish things had been different, because now you realize if life hadn't cracked you open, you wouldn't have discovered the light inside you. If you hadn't been abandoned, you wouldn't have learned how to hold yourself. If you hadn't been broken, you wouldn't have understood the power of rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Your wounds became your teachers. They showed you who was real, who wasn't. They revealed your strength, your resilience, your ability to keep loving even when love betrayed you. You don't just remember what you went through, you carry it with honor because you survived. And surviving wasn't just about making it through. It was about learning how to breathe again, how to trust again, how to look in the mirror and not see someone damaged, but someone divine. You've stopped trying to be over it because some things You don't get over. You learn to live with them, and that's okay. Integration means accepting that some parts of you still hurt, but they don't hold you hostage anymore. They don't run the show. You get to write the story now, not your trauma. You're no longer defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You're defined by the way you kept walking even when the path was covered in glass. That's what people can't see when they judge your shine. They weren't there during your storm. Yes. What once made you flinch now makes you stand tall. You don't shrink around your truth anymore. You walk into rooms with your head high, knowing that everything you've been through has prepared you for this moment. You're not afraid to be vulnerable because you know vulnerability is strength, not weakness. You know that every time you tell your truth, you heal a little more. And maybe, just maybe, you give someone else the courage to speak their truth too. That's the ripple effect of honoring your wounds. It doesn't just free you, it sets others free too. You've learned that pain is part of the process, not a sign you're failing. And healing doesn't mean erasing, it means embracing. You look back now and you barely recognize the person who used to flinch at every trigger, who used to question their worth because of what they endured. You're not that person anymore. You've grown. You've evolved. You've looked at the ugliest parts of your story and said, even here, I choose to love myself. That kind of self-love is unshakable. It's not surface level. It's deep, rooted, immovable. You're not seeking outside approval anymore because you found inner peace. You're not chasing people who don't see your value because you finally see it for yourself. You're not running from your past. You're rising from it. You used to think healing was some distant destination. Now you know it's a daily choice. Some days you feel strong, other days you feel broken all over again, and both are part of the journey. Integration means you hold both joy and sorrow in the same hands. It means you laugh with the same mouth that once cried for hours. It means you dance, even if your legs still tremble. You don't need perfection anymore. You just need presence. You show up for yourself now. You rest when you're tired. You speak when you're ready. You cry when you need to, without shame. Because healing isn't about being tough. It's about being true. And the most beautiful part, you're still becoming. You're not done. There's more life ahead of you, more love, more purpose, more clarity. The fact that you've made it this far, that you're still standing, still hoping, still growing, that says everything. You are not the same person who was once silenced by pain. You are the one who found a voice in the rubble. And that voice, your voice, it matters. Speak it, live it, own it. Because your healing's not a secret to hide. It's a testimony to share. There comes a time in your life when you realize that feeling something deeply doesn't mean you have to drown in it. That moment right there, that's the shift. That's when you know something in you is changing. You used to get caught up in waves of emotion. One disappointment could take your whole spirit down. One angry word could send your heart spiraling. You were a slave to your reactions, a prisoner to your pain. You felt things so hard it broke you in places you didn't even know could crack. But now you sit with it. You breathe through it. You feel it, but you don't let it destroy you. You recognize the storm and still choose not to be swept away. That, my friend, is the power of emotional mastery. Something you didn't even know you were capable of until the pain pushed you there. You see, it's not that the sadness is gone. It still visits, still taps you on the shoulder in quiet moments. The difference is now you don't run from it. You don't numb it, drown it, or throw it on someone else. You listen. You let it speak. You ask it what it came to teach you. You hold space for your grief, your anger, your anxiety. But you don't give them the steering wheel. You learned that your emotions are messengers, not enemies, and that awareness changes everything. You stopped saying, I am angry, and started saying, I feel anger. You stopped saying, I'm broken, and started saying, I'm in pain. You separated your identity from the experience. And with that space came freedom. There was a time when you couldn't trust yourself with your own emotions. You would lash out, shut down, self-sabotage. You would do anything to escape the feelings bubbling inside of you because you didn't know how to hold them. You thought feeling deeply made you weak. But what you didn't realize is that sensitivity is a gift. It just needs guidance. And now you've become the guide. You've learned how to pause before you react. You've learned how to give your heart the grace of silence before you speak from a place of pain. You've learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is sit in your discomfort and not let it poison your peace. You don't numb anymore. You don't explode. You reflect. That's emotional strength most people never reach. There are moments when the tears still come out of nowhere. Memories rise, your chest gets heavy and your breath catches, but now you let it come. You don't apologize for your emotions anymore. You don't feel guilty for needing to cry, for feeling deeply, for having soft places inside of you. What changed is the judgment. You stop judging yourself for feeling. You stop thinking you had to be robotic just to survive. Now you let your heart break when it needs to, because you know it's not permanent. It's release. You let your joy swell when it rises without wondering how long it'll last. You let life move through you. And that flow, that surrender, that's healing. You stopped fighting your own emotional tide. You learned how to swim. You used to think the goal was to never feel pain again. You told yourself healing meant happiness all day, every day, but the truth is, real healing is about learning to live in the full spectrum of your emotions without letting them control your behavior, your decisions, or your identity. You don't push emotions away anymore. You walk beside them. You treat your feelings like sacred guests. They knock, you open the door, you offer them a seat, and when they've said what they came to say, you let them leave. You don't chain them up or pretend they're not there. You meet them with compassion. That kind of emotional fluency, it took work. It took breakdowns, therapy, journaling, prayer, and 100 sleepless nights. But it taught you that emotions aren't wild animals to be feared. They're parts of your humanity calling you home. Sometimes the people around you don't even know how much you've changed. They still expect the old version of you to show up. The one who reacted without thinking, who broke down under pressure, who screamed just to feel heard. But you're not that person anymore. Now, when someone disrespects you, you don't lose your peace trying to explain your worth. You walk away. You protect your energy. You've learned that you don't owe anyone your emotional stability. Not your past, not your pain, not your ego. You owe it to your future, to your growth, to your purpose. That's why you stay grounded now. That's why you stay calm when chaos calls your name. Because peace is your new baseline. And anything that threatens it isn't worth your time. You still get triggered sometimes. That old wound still whispers. That old voice still echoes. But now you catch it. You recognize the pattern. You ask yourself, is this mine? Or is this old pain trying to take the mic again? You don't let your past drive your present anymore. You slow down. You self-soothe. You create space between the emotion and the action. And that space, that's where your power lives. Because in that pause, you reclaim control. You choose how to respond instead of being yanked around by old trauma. That's the difference. That's how you know you're healing. Not because the emotion is gone, but because it no longer hijacks your life. Some days you still feel like falling apart, but even in those moments, you don't abandon yourself. You don't look for someone else to fix you, to distract you, to carry what's yours to feel. You've become the parent your inner child needed. You soothe yourself with kindness, not criticism. You wrap your own heart in compassion. You sit on the floor, hand on chest, and say, I'm here. I've got you. We're okay. That's love. That's healing. That's what happens when you stop making your emotions the enemy and start making them allies. You no longer treat your heart like a battlefield. You treat it like a sacred space. You don't let someone else's chaos invade your calm anymore. You've learned how to separate your emotions from theirs. You can hold space for someone's anger without absorbing it. You can witness someone's pain without taking it on. Because you've learned that empathy doesn't mean self-sacrifice. It means presence, not punishment. You don't bleed for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You've built emotional boundaries, not walls, but gates. You open them wisely. You protect your peace fiercely because you know your emotions are sacred and not everyone deserves access to them. There was a time when you believed that strength meant not feeling anything. You were taught to toughen up, to suppress, to push it down. But now you've redefined strength. Strength is feeling deeply and still showing up. Strength is crying and still moving forward. Strength is sitting with your rage and not letting it make you cruel. Strength is feeling the grief and not letting it paralyze you. You've learned that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. And now that you own it, nobody can use your emotions against you. You've taken back your power. The most powerful people are not the ones who never feel, they're the ones who feel everything and still choose love. And that's who you're becoming. You don't numb, you don't run, you stand. You breathe, you let the emotion rise and fall like a wave, and you stay anchored in your truth. You no longer need to control how you feel. You've learned to coexist with it. You walk with your sadness like an old friend. You laugh with your joy like a child again. You let life move through you without fear. And that's not just healing, that's freedom. You used to be afraid of your emotions because they felt too big, too wild, too consuming. But now you see, they're not here to harm you. They're here to show you something. Every wave of emotion is a message, a mirror, a moment of reflection. When anger shows up, it's often guarding your boundaries. When sadness comes, it's often revealing your love. When fear rises, it's asking for protection. And now you listen. You honor what each feeling came to say. You don't rush to fix it or flee from it. You just sit with it. And by doing that, you become emotionally fluent in a world that runs from its feelings. You become a lighthouse, still, steady, full of light. And even now, as life keeps shifting, as pain still tries to sneak in the back door, you're not afraid. You know how to face it. You've built an inner home that emotions can pass through without tearing down the walls. You welcome the real, the raw, the true. You've stopped reaching for perfection and started reaching for presence. And when the waves come again, and they will, you won't be swept under. You'll rise like you always do, because you're not controlled by what you feel. You've learned how to feel it all and still stand tall. There's a moment in your healing when you finally realize you don't have to apologize for protecting your peace. You don't have to explain why your heart needed distance, why your mind needed silence, or why your spirit couldn't carry someone else's weight any longer. And that realization, it hits like freedom. You used to let people overstay their welcome in your life because you were scared of being seen as selfish. You let them cross your lines, drain your energy, and take your kindness for granted because you were conditioned to believe that saying no made you a bad person. But not anymore. Not now. Now you understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors, doors that you control. And not everyone gets a key because you've learned the hard way. Peace is expensive, and you paid for it with your breakdowns, your sleepless nights, and the version of you that kept putting others before yourself. That's why you protect it now, not with anger, but with clarity. Not with fear, but with love. And if they don't understand that, they were never meant to walk with you in this new season. You remember when you used to feel guilty for needing space, for not replying right away, for canceling plans, for saying, I just can't right now. That guilt sat in your chest like a weight you couldn't shake off. You convinced yourself that your worth came from being available, being helpful, being selfless. But now you know better. Now you understand that you were burning yourself out trying to keep everyone else warm. You were sacrificing your own mental health just to make sure nobody else was uncomfortable. But healing taught you something powerful. If someone truly loves you, they'll respect your boundaries. They won't guilt you into sacrificing your peace to make them feel better. They won't call you selfish for choosing yourself. That kind of love doesn't control, it honors. And once you tasted that kind of peace, you stopped entertaining anything less. You no longer shrink your needs just to fit someone else's comfort zone. You used to think that being kind meant being available all the time. You said yes when you meant no. You stayed in rooms where your soul was suffocating. You tolerated disrespect and called it patience. You gave people chance after chance, hoping they'd finally see your heart and treat it right. But now, you see clearly. You've learned that kindness without boundaries turns into self-betrayal. You can love someone and still say, this is where I draw the line. You can be compassionate and still say, I won't allow this anymore. That's not cruelty, that's maturity. That's healing. That's what happens when you finally understand that your peace, your energy, your emotional safety are not up for negotiation. You're not here to be everyone's savior. You're not here to exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth. You're here to live in alignment with your truth. And your truth deserves space, protection, and priority. There's a sacred power in the word no. And it took you years to claim it. You used to fear that two-letter word like it would burn bridges, end friendships, cause people to abandon you, so you avoided it. You stretched yourself thin. You said yes to things you didn't want. You took on responsibilities that weren't yours. But every time you said yes out of guilt, you said no to yourself, no to your time, no to your healing, no to your growth. But now you say no with full chest, clear mind, and steady heart. You say it without flinching, without backtracking, without over-explaining. Because you finally understand your no is sacred. It's your right. It's your responsibility. And if your boundaries push people away, let them go. The ones meant for you will never require you to burn yourself out to be loved. Healing taught you that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned the right to sit at your table, to hear your thoughts, to feel your presence. You used to give people front row seats in your life who wouldn't even clap for you. You gave them unlimited access to your time, your energy, your heart, and they treated it like it was nothing. But you're not that person anymore. Now you evaluate who gets access. You observe how people respond to your boundaries. You watch how they act when you say, that doesn't work for me. Because how someone reacts to your boundary tells you everything about how they value your existence. And when someone tries to guilt trip you, manipulate you, or punish you for protecting your peace, you don't argue, you don't convince, you just walk away. Quietly, strongly, without regret. It's not always easy. There are days when guilt creeps in like a shadow. Days when your old self whispers, maybe you're being too harsh. Days when you miss the connection, even if it was one-sided. But you remind yourself, setting a boundary doesn't make you unkind. It makes you conscious. It means you've stopped operating on autopilot and started living intentionally. You've stopped abandoning yourself for the sake of being liked. You've stopped confusing being needed with being loved. And even though it hurts to disappoint people, you've realized it hurts more to keep disappointing yourself. That's why you stay grounded in your boundaries. Because the cost of betraying yourself is too high now. You've come too far to go back. There's a quiet confidence that comes with honoring your boundaries. You don't need to yell, argue, or defend anymore. Your peace speaks for itself. Your energy has shifted. You don't beg to be understood. You don't over-explain your decisions. You've learned to trust your intuition. You've learned to listen to your body when it tightens in someone's presence. You've learned to walk away from what no longer feels right without needing a reason everyone agrees with. That kind of alignment, it radiates. It protects you from emotional predators. It shields you from people who feed on your people-pleasing tendencies. And most of all, it keeps you rooted in your own truth. That's where your healing lives now, in the quiet, firm decision to choose yourself over and over again without guilt. People will try to make you feel guilty for changing, for no longer being available in the same way, for no longer tolerating what you used to. But that guilt doesn't belong to you. That guilt is theirs, the result of losing the version of you that enabled their comfort. You're not responsible for how people feel about your growth. You're not obligated to stay small just so others can feel big. If your boundaries make someone uncomfortable, it's because they benefited from your lack of them. And that's not your burden to carry. Your job isn't to keep the peace at the expense of your own. Your job is to walk in your truth with love, courage, and integrity. And you're doing that now, unapologetically. Sometimes setting boundaries looks like distance, like not replying, like unfollowing, like silence. And that silence, it's not petty, it's sacred. It's a declaration that your energy is no longer a revolving door for chaos. It's a statement that you are no longer available for conversations that dishonor your soul. You used to think you had to be confrontational to set boundaries, but now you know sometimes the most powerful boundary is the one you set with your absence. You don't have to fight. You don't have to argue. You can simply disengage. Let your peace be the loudest thing in the room. Let your detachment speak volumes. That's what healing looks like in real time. There will be moments when your boundaries are tested. People will push back. They'll try to guilt you into old patterns. They'll say you've changed like it's an accusation. And you'll smile, not with arrogance, but with peace. Because yes, you have changed. You've grown. You've learned the difference between connection and obligation, between support and self-sacrifice. And you are no longer willing to pay for other people's comfort with your own discomfort. That's not selfish. That's self-aware. And even though it's hard, even though the loneliness sometimes stings, you keep going. You keep choosing yourself. Because you know if you don't honor your own boundaries, no one else will. Now you move with a different kind of grace. A bold, quiet, unshakable grace. You're not out to hurt anyone. You're not bitter. You're just clear. Clear about who you are, clear about what you will and will not allow, clear about what you need to stay aligned. And in that clarity, you found your power. The power to say no without guilt, the power to walk away without regret, the power to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. And this power, it didn't come easy. You earned it. Through every tear, every broken relationship, every painful lesson, you earned it. And now you wear it like armor. Not to fight, but to stand. Not to attack, but to protect. Not to prove, but to preserve. You no longer apologize for needing time alone, for not attending every event, for turning your phone off, for saying that doesn't feel right to me. You no longer seek permission to rest, to disconnect, to say no, because you finally understand your life is yours. Your energy is yours. Your healing is yours. And no one has the right to make you feel guilty for protecting what's sacred. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be whole, to be aligned, to be free. And that freedom, it starts with boundaries. Quiet ones, firm ones, ones that speak for you when your words fall short. And now you walk in that freedom every day, with peace in your heart, and no guilt in your soul. There was a time you feared being alone. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. You thought solitude meant something was wrong, like you were broken or unlovable or missing some piece everyone else seemed to have. The silence used to scream at you, reminding you of everything you didn't want to face. You'd reach for noise, conversations, relationships, distractions, just to avoid yourself. But somewhere along your journey, something shifted. You stopped seeing solitude as a punishment and started seeing it as a portal, a place where healing actually begins. You realize that the quiet isn't empty, it's full of answers. When the world gets quiet, your soul gets loud. You start hearing the things you've ignored for years. Your needs, your pain, your truth. And it's not always comfortable. In fact, at first it's terrifying, but once you stop running and start listening, you realize solitude isn't the enemy, it's the invitation. You started to see that some of your most painful moments happened in crowded rooms, surrounded by people who didn't understand you, supported by people who only stayed when you were convenient. You were never truly seen, even in the middle of attention. That kind of loneliness, when you're not alone but still feel invisible, is the deepest kind of ache. And when you compare that to solitude, you begin to see the difference. Being alone doesn't mean being unloved. It means being honest. Honest about who's really there for you and who only shows up when they need something. Solitude gave you the space to grieve the loss of illusions, to stop pretending that shallow connections filled your soul. It showed you the beauty of your own company. It reminded you that your worth isn't measured by how many people you're surrounded by, but how deeply you've learned to sit with yourself without flinching. At first, it was hard to sit in silence. You weren't used to hearing your own thoughts without interruption. You weren't used to not performing, not adjusting, not editing yourself to fit someone else's expectations. Solitude forced you to meet the unfiltered version of you. You didn't always like what you saw. The insecurity, the anger, the unresolved grief. It all rose to the surface like smoke from a fire you tried to hide. But that's the power of being alone. It strips away the noise and leaves you with the truth. And the truth, even when it's ugly, will set you free. You started journaling, praying, walking without music in your ears. You learned to observe your thoughts without judgment, to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. And in that stillness, you didn't find weakness. You found wisdom. You found courage. You found a version of yourself that didn't need to prove or please, a version that could finally breathe. People started asking why you pulled back, why you weren't so available anymore, why you weren't always out, always answering, always present, and you had no dramatic story to tell, just the quiet truth that you'd grown tired of abandoning yourself for the sake of connection. That solitude wasn't a retreat, it was a return to self, to clarity, to alignment. You weren't isolating, you were healing, and that distinction matters. Isolation is rooted in pain. Solitude is rooted in power. When you isolate, you disconnect from life, but when you embrace solitude, you reconnect with yourself. And that reconnection, it shifted everything. You started making decisions not from fear or pressure, but from clarity. You learned to listen to your intuition, to trust your body, to rest without guilt, to create without needing applause. You realized you were finally moving in rhythm with your soul. You began to notice how much of your past was shaped by a fear of being alone. How many times you stayed in toxic spaces just to avoid emptiness? How often you said yes when you meant no just to keep someone close? But the more you sat with yourself, the more you realized your fear of solitude was never really about being alone. It was about facing the parts of yourself you didn't understand. You feared your own depth, your own power, your own truth. But solitude held a mirror up to you, and slowly you stopped looking away. You stopped flinching at your reflection. You stopped waiting for someone else to tell you who you are. Because now you know. You're not the voice of your trauma. You're not the story of your abandonment. You're the author now. You decide what you carry. And in solitude, you've begun rewriting your narrative. Not for validation, but for liberation. There's something sacred about waking up alone and feeling at peace. No one to impress. No one to manage. Just you, your breath, your space. You make your coffee the way you like it. You sit in the sun a little longer. You read what speaks to you, not what trends dictate. And you realize this is what freedom feels like. Not loneliness, not lack, but fullness. You're not waiting for someone to complete you anymore. You're not putting your joy on hold until someone else shows up. You are the one you were waiting for. And in that realization, you find a power that no one can take from you. You no longer panic in silence. You thrive in it. You no longer chase chaos for company. You choose peace, even if it means walking alone. Because solitude taught you to listen inward, and that voice, your voice, is worth everything. You stop filling your calendar just to feel important. You stop overbooking your time to escape your thoughts. You learn to sit in a quiet room without reaching for your phone. You started noticing the beauty around you. A bird song, a flicker of light on the wall, the rhythm of your own breathing. These moments became sacred, not because they were dramatic, but because they were honest. In solitude, you don't need to perform. You don't need to explain, you just are. And that just being healed something inside you. It reminded you that your worth isn't in your productivity, that your presence is enough, that stillness isn't empty, it's a conversation with your soul. And now, you protect your solitude like it's oxygen, because it is. It's where you hear God, where you hear truth, where you hear yourself. There was a time when silence made you restless. Now it makes you whole. There was a time when being alone felt like rejection. Now it feels like alignment. You're not hiding from the world. You're reconnecting with it on your terms. You walk slower now. You speak with more intention. You don't rush to respond. You pause, you breathe, you reflect. Because solitude slowed you down in the best way. It stripped away the urgency, the pressure, the need to be constantly on. You realized you don't owe everyone access. You don't have to answer every call, attend every event, explain every absence. You are allowed to disappear for a while and come back whole. You are allowed to protect your peace, even if it confuses others. And you've learned those who love you will understand. Those who don't never really saw you anyway. In solitude, you discovered your creativity. Ideas started flowing that had been buried under distractions. Dreams you forgot you had started whispering again. You picked up a pen, a paintbrush, a prayer. You reconnected with purpose, not because someone told you what to do, but because you finally heard yourself clearly. Solitude didn't just give you peace, it gave you vision. It gave you space to dream again without judgment. You no longer needed external validation to believe in your ideas. You believed because you saw what you were capable of in the quiet. You remembered that still waters run deep, and your depth, once hidden behind fear, now became your power source. The silence that once scared you became your sanctuary. And from that place, you began building a life that felt like home. You stopped craving attention. You started valuing intention. You stopped begging to be chosen. You started choosing yourself. And that choice changed everything. Solitude taught you that your value isn't determined by how many people like you, but by how fully you've learned to accept yourself. You looked at your scars and saw strength. You looked at your mistakes and saw lessons. You looked at your solitude and saw healing, not punishment. And now, when someone asks, "Are you lonely?" you smile. Not because you're denying the occasional ache, but because you've made peace with the difference between solitude and loneliness. One isolates, the other empowers. And you've chosen empowerment. You've chosen growth. You've chosen yourself fully and without apology. You no longer run from empty rooms. You decorate them with peace. You fill them with books, light, music that moves your soul. You no longer wait for someone to come sit beside you to feel whole. You sit with yourself and feel complete. And it doesn't mean you don't want connection. It means you've stopped needing it to feel validated. You want people in your life who add to your joy, not complete it. People who respect your solitude, not resent it. And those kinds of people, they find you when you're no longer afraid of being alone. They find you when your energy speaks for you, when your peace becomes your standard, when your solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your sentence. That's the life you're living now, rooted, aligned, whole. You used to believe that closure was something someone had to give you, that you couldn't move on, couldn't breathe again, couldn't heal until they came back and explained themselves, until they looked you in the eyes and gave you reasons that made the pain make sense. You waited for apologies that never came, replayed conversations that never ended properly, held on to pain because it felt unfinished. You thought forgiveness needed a conclusion, a clean ending, but real life doesn't always work like that. People leave mid-sentence, they hurt you and pretend nothing happened. They ghost you, blame you, lie to you, and then disappear as if your story was just a chapter in their book. You spent nights asking why. You lost sleep crafting letters in your head that you never sent. But then something inside you changed. You realized closure isn't given, it's created. It's not in their hands, it's in yours. You stopped needing their words to make peace with what they broke. You stopped chasing explanations from people who weren't even honest with themselves, let alone with you. You started seeing that sometimes the people who hurt you don't have the capacity to give you what you need. Not clarity, not remorse, not truth. And you made the bold decision to forgive anyway. Not because they deserved it, but because you did. You deserved peace. You deserved freedom from the weight you were carrying. Forgiveness stopped being about them and started being about you. About your healing, your growth, your power. You learned to release people without bitterness, without revenge. You stopped waiting for the day they'd realize what they lost. You stopped writing mental scripts, hoping they'd come back and say all the right things. You let go, not because you had all the answers, but because you finally understood that your healing is not dependent on their accountability. At first, it felt impossible. How do you forgive someone who shattered you and never looked back? How do you release anger when you never even got acknowledgement? It felt unfair. It felt like they were winning, like you were letting them off the hook. But slowly you began to understand something deeper. Holding on to resentment didn't punish them, it punished you. It kept you tethered to their behavior, trapped in a cycle of replaying wounds. Your bitterness didn't make you stronger, it made you tired. And it was stealing from your present. It was clouding your joy. So you made the decision quietly, maybe tearfully, but intentionally, to forgive for your own sake, to let your spirit breathe again. And with that forgiveness came a strange kind of strength, not loud, not aggressive, but grounded, peaceful, solid. You weren't weak for forgiving without closure. You were powerful for choosing yourself over your pain. You stopped seeking validation from the person who caused the wound. You stopped needing them to say you were right or I was wrong. Because deep down, you already knew the truth. You just didn't trust yourself to believe it without their confirmation. But forgiveness without closure taught you self-trust. It taught you that you don't need someone else to acknowledge your hurt for it to be real. You don't need anyone's permission to move on. Your emotions are valid, even if no one else understands them. Your pain matters, even if the person who caused it acts like it doesn't. And that shift, it changed everything. You stopped arguing with the past. You stopped needing the last word. You stopped fighting for explanations that would never satisfy you. Instead, you started choosing peace, quiet peace, deep peace. The kind that says, I'm done letting this control me. You realize that forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, it just releases its grip on your life. It doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you've stopped letting their actions decide your future. You've stopped dragging their behavior into every new relationship, every new opportunity. You're no longer coloring your present with the brush of your past. Forgiveness doesn't make you foolish, it makes you free. You learned that closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. A decision to stop reliving the hurt. A decision to stop letting someone else's immaturity, neglect, or cruelty be the main character in your story. You took your power back by releasing what you never had control over to begin with. You can't control if they come back, you can't control if they change, but you can control your healing. You can choose to walk forward even when the door behind you never officially closed. You had to grieve what you didn't get, the apology, the understanding, the loyalty, the effort. You had to accept the reality that some people will never see the damage they caused. They'll rewrite history in their favor. They'll call you too sensitive or dramatic. They'll play the victim while you sit in silence, nursing wounds they don't even acknowledge. And it hurts, it stings. But that's where the real forgiveness starts, in that ache. In that moment where you decide to stop waiting for justice and start creating peace. You stop chasing the why. You stopped obsessing over what you could have done differently. You stopped trying to make someone care who clearly didn't. That's not weakness. That's transformation. You grew past the need for revenge. You grew past the fantasy of them suddenly changing. You grew into someone who knows their value isn't tied to someone else's recognition of it. There's something powerful about realizing you don't need to understand everything to move on. You don't need every puzzle piece to find peace. You don't need to fix what broke in someone else. You only need to honor what broke in you and commit to healing it. You've learned to say, I release you, even when you never got the closure you thought you needed. You've learned to walk away without resentment, to feel sadness without bitterness, to remember what happened without being held hostage by it. And that takes emotional maturity. That takes strength most people don't talk about. Because forgiveness without closure is quiet work, invisible work, but it's the work that sets your soul free. You've stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't have bandaged you. You've stopped watering relationships that only drained you. And most importantly, you've stopped betraying yourself just to keep broken things intact. You've started recognizing the patterns, the aha moments where you used to spiral, those texts you never got, those explanations that never came. You see them now for what they are, invitations to choose peace or pain. You've stopped answering those invitations. You've stopped needing to make someone the villain in order to heal. You've realized that people hurt others for 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with you. And even if it was about you, it doesn't define you. Their silence doesn't mean your voice is invalid. Their absence doesn't mean you weren't worthy of presence. Their betrayal doesn't mean you deserved it. These truths have become your new foundation. You've built strength not on vengeance, but on clarity. Not on retaliation, but on release. And there's something so powerful about walking through life with an open heart, not because you were never wounded, but because you refused to stay wounded. The more you forgave without closure, the more you grew. You started seeing people for who they are, not for who you hope they'd be. You let go of potential and embraced reality. You stopped over-explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer needed to win the argument. You just needed to win your peace, and you did. You You learn to forgive without asking for anything in return, not even an apology. Because your healing doesn't need their participation. You're healing on your own terms, in your own time. And now, you hold space for yourself in ways you used to hold space for everyone else. You don't chase closure anymore. You create it with boundaries, with truth, with release. And every time you do, your spirit breathes a little easier. You still have moments when the memory sneaks up on you, when you wonder what you did wrong, when you wish things had ended differently. But those moments no longer control you. They no longer define your days. You've learned to sit with them without being consumed, to observe the pain without inviting it to stay. You've learned to give yourself the compassion they never gave you, to speak the words you needed to hear. I'm sorry they hurt you. You didn't deserve that. You are still worthy of love and peace. And that voice, your own inner voice, it's become stronger, louder, kinder. You've learned to be the closure you never received, to become the healing you were once waiting for someone else to deliver. And that's a powerful shift. That's self-respect. That's emotional freedom. You no longer expect people to make amends. You no longer keep the door open hoping they'll return. You've accepted that some chapters don't end with punctuation, they just fade, and that's okay. You've chosen to close the book anyway. Not because it ended perfectly, but because it no longer serves the story you're trying to write. Forgiveness without closure isn't a lack of strength. It's a masterclass in emotional resilience. You stop needing to hear "I'm sorry" to know you were wronged. You stop needing to see regret in their eyes to validate your experience. You now understand that true closure is internal. It's the decision to stop bleeding for a wound someone else walked away from. It's the decision to stop letting that wound shape your identity. And in that decision, you've found your freedom. You've always been taught to look at your past as a blueprint for your future. But what if it wasn't a blueprint at all? What if your past was simply a chapter in the story of who you are and not the defining feature of your life? Most of us grow up believing that the things that have happened to us, our mistakes, our failures, our pains, are permanent, that they determine who we will become. We feel shackled by memories of past mistakes, lost relationships, and missed opportunities, as if we can't break free from the weight of everything that's come before us. But in reality, your past doesn't have to hold you hostage. The way you choose to view it, whether as a curse or just a chapter, determines the entire trajectory of your life. If you see it as a curse, you'll live with the belief that everything you've been through is something you need to overcome to find happiness. But if you start to see your past as simply a chapter, a part of the story, you open up the possibility that the best chapters of your life are yet to come. There is a freedom that comes with letting go of the burden of your past. It doesn't mean forgetting it. It doesn't mean erasing the hurt or the disappointment. It just means choosing not to let those past moments define you anymore. You are not the mistakes you made, the people who hurt you, or the setbacks you experienced. You are who you are right now in this moment. And the future you are stepping into can be something entirely different from the past you left behind. When you begin to view your past as a chapter, you remove the weight it holds over you. You stop identifying with the struggles and the pain. It's simply a part of your story that's been written, and you're the one who gets to decide how that story continues. You are not bound by what you've been through. In fact, what you've experienced is what makes you unique. Those experiences, whether good or bad, shape your understanding of the world, but they don't have to control how you move through it. They just provide context to who you are. When you embrace your past as a chapter, you stop allowing it to be the judge of your worth. You let go of the shame, the guilt, and the feeling that you're defined by what's happened before. Instead, you realize that who you are today is a person with infinite possibilities. The chapter you're currently living in isn't the end of your book. It's just one section. And you have the power to write the rest of your life however you want. The moment you start seeing your past as a chapter, you stop holding on to regret. You stop asking what if and start asking what's next. Because the future isn't dictated by the mistakes of yesterday. It's shaped by the decisions you make today. Your past may have given you wisdom, but it does not hold you captive. When you begin to look at your life as a series of chapters, you also begin to see that each chapter is meant to teach you something. It's not about being stuck in the past or wishing for things to be different. It's about learning from the experiences that have shaped you. Each chapter is written with a purpose, whether it's to teach you strength, patience, forgiveness, or resilience. These lessons aren't meant to keep you stuck in those painful moments. They're meant to equip you for the future. The more you see your past as a chapter, the less power it has to control your present. And the less power it has to keep you from moving forward. You become less attached to the idea that you need to fix or change what happened in the past. Instead, you accept it for what it is. A chapter that has already been written. The true power lies in how you respond to it. You get to decide how much weight you give it in your life moving forward. When you live as if your past is a chapter, you stop letting it dictate the terms of your happiness. You stop waiting for some mythical moment when everything makes sense. When you finally get the apology, when everything is made right, you take control over your own happiness, choosing to live in the present and look forward to the future. You become the author of your own story. You choose how to shape the next chapter. Each day you are writing the next pages of your life, and those pages are not confined by what came before. When you see your past as a chapter, you stop attaching your identity to the pain. Instead, you begin to see the lessons, the growth, and the person you are becoming because of those experiences. You realize that the experiences that hurt you the most may very well have given you the most valuable lessons. The people who disappointed you, the failures you feared, and the battles you fought, they have all contributed to the person you are today. And that person is stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. You start to understand that your life is a continuous journey, a series of chapters, each contributing to the greater narrative of your life. There's a beauty in knowing that what you've been through does not define where. Every new chapter is an opportunity to change the narrative. The most important chapter of your life has not been written yet, and it's up to you to write it with courage, conviction, and hope. The moment you begin to see your past as just one chapter in your story, you free yourself from the heavy burden of carrying it everywhere you go. You realize that the people who abandon you or let you down no longer have a hold on your life. You stop replaying the mistakes you made or the things you could have done differently. You stop letting the past take away your energy, your peace, and your potential. Instead, you start living with the confidence that your past is just that, a part of who you were, not who you are. This shift in perspective allows you to step into your future with a renewed sense of freedom. You become less afraid of what's next because you know you're not defined by what you've already been through. When you see your past as a chapter, you open yourself up to the possibility of growth and transformation. You stop thinking that what happened yesterday will always haunt you and start believing that today is the day you get to start fresh. This is your story, and you are the author. The way you choose to move forward is up to you. You get to decide whether the next chapter is filled with fear or hope, with limitations or possibilities. You choose. And that choice gives you the power to shape your own future, regardless of what your past may have been. You've learned that your past doesn't define your worth, and neither do the mistakes you've made or the people who let you down. Your value is not in the past, but in your potential to create something new, something better. The past is not a curse, it's just a chapter. And the best chapters are yet to be written. As we reflect on the journey of our lives, it's crucial to realize that the past, no matter how heavy or challenging, is only a chapter in the story of who we are becoming. The mistakes, the pain, the lessons, they are not the defining features of our identity, but stepping stones that guide us toward growth and transformation. When we choose to see our past as just a chapter, we release the hold it has over us, no longer allowing it to define our worth or shape our future. This shift in perspective empowers us to break free from the chains of regret, guilt, and shame, and embrace the endless possibilities that lie ahead. What happened before does not have to dictate what happens next. The chapters of our lives are written with purpose, and each experience contributes to the person we are today. But the beauty lies in the fact that the story is still being written. The pen is in our hands, and the future is not bound by the past. Each new chapter brings opportunities for healing, growth, and change. And just as we would never let one chapter of a book define the entire story, we should never let one chapter of our lives define who we are or what we're capable of. So as you move forward, remember that the past holds valuable lessons but does not control your destiny. You are not bound by the mistakes you've made, the pain you've endured, or the people who have hurt you. You are free to create a new narrative, to write a future that aligns with your dreams, your hopes, and your potential. The past is merely a part of the journey, a chapter that has been written, but the pages that follow, they are yours to fill. Embrace this freedom. Take control of the direction you want to go and trust that the best chapters of your life are yet to come. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on this with me today. I hope this message resonates with you and serves as a reminder that your past does not define your future. May you find the strength and courage to move forward, knowing that each day is an opportunity to write the next chapter of your life. God bless you, and may your journey ahead be filled with peace, growth, and endless possibilities.